Welcome back to Bad Things in History, where state by state we're here to show you that you will never be safe anywhere. This time we return to the Deep South and visit the state of Alabama. Residents often say thank God for Mississippi to make themselves feel better about the shortcomings of their state. But is Alabama really that much better? Let's find out. Let's kick it off with a tale of murder. The Hawes Murders. On the morning of December 4th, 1888, two teenage girls climbed into a small boat. They paddled out into a lake a few miles east of downtown Birmingham. There they saw what they thought was a dead dog floating on the surface, but as they got closer it was clear that the floating body belonged to a young girl who appeared to be around 8 years old. Nobody could identify the child. Her body was put on display for the public to see in case anybody knew her name. A local butcher said he knew the child. Her name was May. She was the daughter of Richard and Emma Hawes. In addition to May, Richard and Emma also had two more children. As police tried to figure out what happened, they became aware of a telegram stating that Richard Hawes had just married and had begun his honeymoon voyage. Since Richard's train passed through Birmingham, authorities decided to take the opportunity to arrest him. During questioning, Richard claimed he was innocent. He said that he had divorced Emma, and when he left several days ago, both Emma and May were still alive. Authorities were becoming increasingly concerned as they couldn't find the rest of Richard's children. One of them was found safe in Atlanta soon after Richard's arrest, but the whereabouts of Emma and the other two were still not known. On December 8th, police found a blood-soaked axe near a pond. The pond was then drained, and at the bottom were the bodies of Emma and the remaining children. As news of the discovery spread, the public became very angry and wanted to lynch Richard Hawes. A group of 3,000 angry citizens surrounded the city jail and demanded access to the prisoner inside. A random gunshot rang out, after which police began shooting at the mob. More than a dozen people were shot, and many of them died from their injuries, but Richard remained safe within the jail. It was the spring of 1889 before he was finally put on trial. After 2 weeks, Richard and two accomplices were found guilty of murder. On February 28, 1890, Richard was given a last meal of steak and eggs, though he consumed little of it. He was taken to the gallows later that day, where he was hanged. The lake where May was discovered still exists. Today it is one of the main features of East Lake Park. Convict Leasing. The first state prison in Alabama was built in 1841. Once prisoners began arriving, it became obvious that housing inmates was expensive, so the state came up with an idea to keep costs under control. On February 4, 1846, the state decided to lease the prison and its occupants to a local businessman. The business owner then used convicts as labor and claimed all profits from their work. The system continued until 1862 and was the first example of the convict leasing system. After slavery ended in 1865, all the southern states began implementing convict leasing systems. Alabama was the first to implement convict leasing, and it would be the last to eliminate it. Thanks to slavery being illegal, plantations no longer had free labor. It was also difficult to hire enough workers for the mines and railroads, but convicted criminals provided a convenient solution. More specifically, minorities became a tempting target for law enforcement. African Americans in southern states were arrested in large numbers. After being convicted, they were sent to a state prison. The state prison then forced inmates to work for businesses that didn't want to pay wages. For Alabama, the revenue generated by these incarcerated individuals was enormous. In 1883, prison labor was 10% of the state's total revenue. By 1889, it accounted for an incredible 73%. The system ended mostly because of bad publicity. As stories began to circulate about petty criminals being flogged to death for not working hard enough, the public began to demand change. The writer Douglas E. Blackman, in his book Slavery by Another Name, described convict leasing. It was a form of bondage distinctly different from that of the antebellum South in that for most men and the relatively few women drawn in, this slavery did not last a lifetime and did not automatically extend from one generation to the next. But it was nonetheless slavery, a system in which armies of free men, guilty of no crimes and entitled by law to freedom, were compelled to labor without compensation, were repeatedly bought and sold, and were forced to do the bidding of white masters through the regular application of extraordinary physical coercion. The state of Alabama finally stopped leasing convicts to businesses in 1928. Phenix City Assassination. Political corruption and murder have at times been a problem in Alabama. Albert Love Patterson was born in the town of New Site on January 27, 1894. He grew up on a farm with his siblings. As a young man, he left to seek a better life. At first, Albert traveled around East Texas and earned a living as a day laborer. He married in 1917, but in July 1918, Albert joined the Army and entered World War I. He was seriously wounded during a battle in France, but survived. In 1921, Albert returned to Alabama and went to school. He received a teacher's certificate and worked as a principal for a few years. Then he earned a degree in history. After that, in just 1 year, he acquired a law degree. In 1933, he purchased a home in Phenix City. In 1937, Albert entered the world of politics. First, he served on the Board of Education. In 1946, he was elected to the Alabama State Senate. But around 1950, he decided to improve his community. This simple act of public service would result in Albert's death. He spent much of his time trying to fight against the political corruption that was rampant in Phenix City and the surrounding county. Albert's efforts angered those who benefited from the illegal activities. In 1952, unknown attackers set his offices on fire, but it didn't stop Albert from moving forward with his plan. In 1954, he ran for Attorney General of Alabama. The Phenix City political machine tried to interfere by purchasing votes and threatening people. In the end, Albert overcame his opponents and won the election. On the evening of June 18, 1954, Albert was heard telling a church group, "I have only a 100-to-1 chance of ever being sworn in as Attorney General." He was right. As he walked to his car later that evening, somebody approached him, put a gun in his mouth, and pulled the trigger 3 times. The state government reacted quickly. Governor Gordon Persons declared martial law in Phenix City and sent the National Guard in to take over law enforcement duties. Over the next 6 months, the state government dismantled the political machinery in Phenix City. Over 734 indictments were issued against elected officials, law enforcement personnel, and business owners. Albert's son, John Malcolm Patterson, assumed the office of Attorney General in 1955. In 1958, he was elected governor after campaigning on a platform to clean up corruption. Alabama's Black Widow. One of the most evil people Alabama ever produced may have been Audrey Marie Hilley. She was born in Anniston on June 4, 1933. When she was 17, she met Frank Hilley. They married in 1950 and had 2 children, a daughter and a son. Frank started working in a shipping department. Audrey was a secretary, but the couple argued a lot. The reason why was money. There was never enough for Audrey. One day in 1975, Frank was feeling ill and came home early. He found Audrey in bed with her boss. Then Frank started feeling a lot of pain in his abdomen. Doctors determined that his liver was failing. They were unable to save him, and Frank died on May 25th. After Frank's death, Audrey finally acquired some of the cash she desired. She had taken out a $31,140 life insurance policy on Frank before he became sick, which was very fortunate timing. In 1978, Audrey took out a life insurance policy on her daughter Carol. The following year, Carol started having a lot of health problems. She was vomiting and had stomach pains. Audrey began giving Carol injections to help with the discomfort. When doctors examined Carol, they thought it might be a mental illness. They sent her to a psychiatric hospital. Audrey visited as often as she could and continued to give Carol injections without the hospital staff knowing. The University of Alabama Hospital finally figured out what was wrong with Carol. They determined that Audrey had been giving her increasingly larger doses of arsenic for several months. Arsenic poisoning eventually causes organs to fail. On October 9, 1979, Audrey was arrested for the attempted murder of Carol. At the time of her arrest, she had a vial of arsenic in her purse. Despite being caught with a deadly poison, on November 9th, Audrey posted bail and was released from prison. She then disappeared and became a fugitive. While she was hiding from law enforcement, Audrey was also indicted for Frank's murder. Audrey moved to Florida and met a man named John Homan. She told him that her name was Robbie Hennon. They were married on May 29, 1981. Soon after taking their wedding vows, Audrey informed John that she had a twin sister named Terry Hennon. Later that year, Audrey and John moved to New Hampshire. In late 1982, she left their home and went to Texas. Then she called John and told him that she was actually Terry, the twin sister, and she informed him that Robbie was dead. But there was no point in coming to get the body because it had been donated to medical science. In November 1982, she returned to New Hampshire to meet with John as Terry Hennon. John's family became suspicious, and so did police. She was finally arrested and questioned and gave the police her real name. After being a fugitive for 3 years, Audrey was finally sent back to Alabama. In 1983, she began serving a 20-year prison term. Since Audrey had been an office worker, the prison gave her a job doing paperwork. She was very well behaved and earned several one-day passes, and after learning the truth, John didn't divorce her. Instead, he moved to Alabama to be closer to her. Audrey was frequently given weekend passes to visit her husband, and she always returned to prison on time. On February 22, 1987, she was given a 3-day pass. After staying with John for 1 day, she left him a note asking for forgiveness. Then she disappeared. Audrey was found 4 days later on a woman's porch. She had apparently spent 4 days in the forest freezing. An ambulance was called. Paramedics were trying to get Audrey to the hospital, but she suffered a heart attack on the way. The sheriff who was leading the search effort to find her said, "Nobody in their wildest imagination thought it would end like this." The Southside Slayer. Not all of the murderers in Alabama were born there. In one case, a serial killer moved to the state to continue his deadly habit. Daniel Lee Siebert was born in Mattoon, Illinois on June 17, 1954. His childhood was not a happy one. Daniel was physically abused by his father and neglected by his mother. As a young adult, he joined the United States Marines, but his new career didn't last long. They ejected him from the military with a dishonorable discharge. Life didn't improve after the military. In 1979, Daniel killed someone in Las Vegas. He was convicted of manslaughter. Legal issues were a problem, so Daniel needed to move to a place where nobody knew him. In 1985, as he was trying to find a new place to live, Daniel briefly stopped in Los Angeles and killed a woman. In 1986, he changed his name to Daniel Spence and moved to Talladega, Alabama. Daniel then became a teacher at the Alabama Institute for the Deaf and Blind, but he wasn't there to help his students learn. Soon after arriving, he killed a student and her 2 children. Then he killed another student a short time later. Daniel preferred to watch his victims die as he slowly strangled them. Police questioned him about the disappearances but didn't get any useful information. After taking his fingerprints, they realized that Daniel Spence was actually Daniel Lee Siebert, and they found out he had been convicted of manslaughter several years earlier. Rather than wait to be arrested, Daniel left Alabama and tried to escape authorities. But 6 months later, he was arrested in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee. After being arrested and sent back to Alabama, Daniel confessed to killing 12 different people in at least 5 different states. He said the reason why is because he wanted to use the victims for sex and money. Daniel was convicted and sentenced to die. He was supposed to receive a lethal injection on October 25, 2007. However, while waiting for the date to arrive, he developed pancreatic cancer. Daniel's lawyers claimed the execution shouldn't proceed because the lethal injection drugs would interact with the cancer drugs and cause an unreasonable amount of pain. The court agreed and delayed the execution. Daniel passed away on April 22, 2008, from his cancer. Alabama has an interesting and terrible history. We've only covered a small part of the unpleasant things that have happened there. Is there anything we should have covered and didn't? Let us know about it in the comments below. Would you like early access to our episodes? Do you enjoy our narrator's voice and want a custom message recorded for you? Hey, wait a minute. Perhaps you like this creepy animated character and want him to do something entertaining for you. Or maybe you just want us to create an episode on a topic you like. All these things could be yours. You just need to become a patron. The link is in the video description if you're interested. Thank you for watching Bad Things in History.